Hi, Dave from road.cc here. Now, ultracycling is a big thing at the moment. We've just had the Transcontinental race and we've also had the North Cape 4000. And with me is the winner of the North Cape 4000, Dr. Ian Walker from Bath University. So we've come up to Bath Uni to have a look at his bike and ask him about the race and find out how it went.
Yeah,
well, it went well because you won.
It did. It was. It wasn't without some efforts, but yeah, really good result.
And it's 11 countries in 11 days, is that
That's
right?
right, yeah.
And 4,400?
4,300 and a bit.
4,300 and a bit. That's a fairly decent effort.
It was, and yeah.
So, starting in Lake Garda.
Yep.
And all the way to Nordkapp.
Yes.
So all the way through Europe.
Yep.
Tell us how it went.
It went really well. It started really badly. I'd made the mistake of getting far too enthusiastic on the first day, riding to a power level that I decided completely arbitrarily would be the right power level, and going too hard and blowing up. And there was a big long climb over the Alps. I found that really hard. I was going far too slow. So the first day was a bit of a disaster. Second day was really spent recovering from the first day. I was almost like a recovery ride. So I was feeling pretty down after a couple of days. Really just then kept plugging away, just kept going at the best I could, and found myself creeping back up the field until we got to Latvia, and I was able to, on a sort of difficult dirt section, I was able to actually get ahead of everybody else and get in the lead in Latvia.
So that was the kind of defining moment of the ride.
Absolutely, yeah. And then it was all about just keeping ahead, worrying about the gap behind me, trying to get that gap as wide as possible.
Yeah.
And actually that was made slightly difficult by the fact that as we hit the coast at Tallinn, there's then a ferry ride. Okay. And so you're responsible for booking a ferry, you're responsible for sorting that out. There are 3 separate ferry companies that all sail at different times.
Right.
And so that added some real complications.
So it was a logistical exercise while you're on the road as well.
Yeah,
like
so I was
smashing into your phone on the bars or...
That was exactly 24-hour petrol station in the middle of Estonia, trying to find out ferry times 16 hours ahead. And yeah.
And then having to rush like a maniac to make it, or...
Exactly. Yeah. But then it was either book a ferry that I thought was probably too early or one that was too late. There was nothing at the right time. Okay. So I went for the slightly later one and spent a really stressful 2 hours hanging around in the departure hall, just watching people get closer on the tracker.
Yeah. Okay. And you say you were riding to power, so you've got power. So you've got Garmin Vector 3 pedals on there. Yeah. So did you have a strategy that you thought you? Well, I mean, obviously it didn't work at the start.
It didn't. So what I found, I went out with a certain sort of. It was roughly sort of 70% of FTP, the sort of thing I decided might work, and I found that was a bit too much. In the end, I really learnt to go more by feel. So especially as I was crossing Poland, I really paid more attention to my breathing, how it felt. And let that guide me. And what I then found was that for this sort of distance, it was more like 60% of FTP was actually the power level that was sustainable for multi-days.
Right, okay. And did you find that was the power level you were putting out and that your body was kind of responding in different ways along the way? Or, I mean, how flat was your power level when you're doing it by feel?
Fairly consistent. Yeah. And I actually found that as I bedded in, as I got towards sort of day 8, 9, 10, and I started to relax into it and get more good at riding to feel, my power actually went back up again slightly. Okay. And I did feel myself getting stronger as the race went on.
Okay, so this is the bike you rode on the race. This is a Whyte Wessex One, in a fairly standard configuration, really. Yeah,
it's pretty much as I bought it, except for new wheels and saddle. Yeah, and it's been very, very comfortable. It seems to just suit me just right. Glides along the road, really pleased with it. One by Group Set, which performed very well, I have to say.
So it's interesting that you're running a one by. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about one by. I mean, obviously disc brakes, a big advantage on a kind of long ride where your hands are tired.
Yes.
But one by, a lot of people would be a bit more reticent about fitting that on a bike for such a long distance event.
Yeah, it worked absolutely fine, and I think if anything, it suits long distance better. The only time I've ever felt any limitation with one by is when I'm riding with a group. And then you sometimes find you're going at someone else's pace, you can't quite get your cadence where you'd want it. Whereas on your own, it really doesn't matter, it's never a problem. And it was interesting just how many other people were riding one by in the same race.
Yeah, okay, and you say that the guy that came second was also on a one by bike. Not expensive one by?
No,
cheapest one by?
This is the cheapest you can get, the Apex One.
Okay.
Performed absolutely great, no problems whatsoever. Could recommend it very happily.
Okay. And we've got a carbon wheel set on here, made by...
Steyr, Judith Steyr.
Okay. And but you haven't run a dynamo?
No, I keep going back and forth on this.
Okay.
I know it would be the sensible thing to do to get
Right.
a dynamo for these races, but it is a point of failure. I have spoken to quite a few people who've had dynamos go on them, so they're carrying battery packs anyway as a backup.
Right.
So I've just generally gone for this approach of just carry the battery pack and deal
Okay.
with that.
And did you find that you had an issue with keeping stuff charged? I mean, I don't know how many
Yeah.
things you were trying to keep charged. I mean, obviously you've got
Yeah.
an element on the front here.
Yeah, so
you
I've
had
got
your phone as
computer
well.
and phone. They were the two key ones,
Okay.
and the light. I had one of the Raveman lights,
Right.
and the backlight here, the C-Sense backlight, which is really good.
Yeah.
So it's really a question of keeping those four things charged. I had a 20,000 milliamp battery pack, which I think would get me through about 3 days.
Right.
So the plan originally was to bivvy as much as possible, and maybe every 3 days or so pop into a hotel, charge up.
Right.
It didn't quite work out like that in the end. There was
It
one
never
night.
does really, does it?
No, it never does. There was one night just on the Czech-Polish border where I ended up having to stay indoors just because I'd run things down a bit too much, and so I had to stop a little bit earlier than I would have done. So maybe 2 or 3 hours earlier than I'd have chosen. But then actually things went the other way. So crossing Poland, Lithuania, there were so many mosquitoes.
Right.
It was just unbelievable at night. And so sleeping outdoors wasn't an option there. So then that changed things completely, that every night I was having to find somewhere indoors to stay.
Okay.
And that again meant I wasn't necessarily doing the length I wanted to do each day. Some days I was having to go a bit further, some days a bit shorter.
Right.
But staying indoors became essential. But on the flip side, that meant that charging devices was now simple.
Okay, so it was never really an issue
Yeah,
along the way
yeah.
after that. That is interesting. And obviously, we haven't got any luggage on this bike at the
Yes.
moment because you've stripped it all off and now you're commuting to work on it.
Yes, yeah. I'll get back to the basics, lightweight as possible
Yeah.
now, yeah.
So, what were you using in terms of luggage?
I
How much
had-
did you carry?
Yeah, so I carried the absolute minimum, and I think I was very successful in choosing the right kit and not going too far. So I had a larger seat pack. I had the Topeak 10 litre seat pack,
Right.
which was basically, that was my night. So that had camping stuff, bad weather clothes, a few spare parts that I was hoping not to need. That all went in there. I had a waterproof Apidura medium frame pack here. That was my day. So that was stuff I might just need to hand. So that was things like chamois cream, basic tools that I might need on the go, bits of food and things like that. I had a little top pack here that had bits and pieces, toothbrush, contact lenses, multi-tool, things like that. And then just a big old feed bag on here that was just jammed full of food as much as possible.
Right.
So I could just constantly be dipping into it
Yeah.
and eating.
And was that your eating strategy
Yeah.
throughout the race, just to
Yeah,
just
good.
carry on grazing as much
Yeah,
as you
graze
could?
as much as possible, but also I do raids on supermarkets where possible.
Right.
So like my absolute super fuel is family-sized pots of yogurt. And so if I ever saw a supermarket, I'd swoop in, a couple of those and keep moving.
No, fantastic. And in terms of camping, what were you carrying? Did you have a bivvy bag?
Bivvy bag and a thin summer sleeping bag.
Right, okay.
Which was fine, even in the Arctic where it got so cold I was forced to camp.
Right.
Once I was in those, I was fine.
Okay. And how cold was it getting overnight? Was it getting down to about freezing? Or?
It was just below, so the coldest
Yeah.
night was the night I crossed the Arctic Circle.
Okay.
And the temperature was reading -1, but there was something about the humidity that made it feel bitterly cold. As soon as you moved, as soon as the air was going across your body, it was unbelievably bad. I had 6 layers of clothes on, so everything including 2 thermal layers.
Right.
I had my sleeping bag wrapped round under my jacket and a load of magazines jammed in my clothes. I found them in a bus shelter.
How was it? Was it
And-
possible to ride like that? Or?
Just about. I was a
Just
bit
about,
stiff-legged.
yeah.
But even that I was too cold, even with that lot. And so
Right.
I just had to bivvy up and wait for the morning.
Oh. And anything else with the bike that's of note? I mean, you were telling me that you lost a tyre and had to run on a €6 replacement from a bike
so
shop somewhere.
running tuber. I've been running tubeless for about a year now.
Okay.
And I've been incredibly happy with that shift. The back one went on a bit of really rough ground where they were repairing the road, and I
Okay.
hit some rough ground. And the sidewall went. It was actually I shoved a tube and a boot in it, and that was okay, but I couldn't quite get the bead to seat properly. Luckily I found a bike shop sort of 20k up the road. He couldn't get it to seat properly even with a compressor, so I ended up buying this €6 tyre that actually got me to the finish no problem.
Yeah.
Amazingly.
Fantastic. And anything else? I mean, contact points, you were saying that you haven't,
Yeah.
I mean, what are we now,
Yeah.
a week after the race?
Well,
or
last
just
year,
after?
when I did Transcontinental last year, my hands were in pieces.
Yeah.
I couldn't do anything for weeks. I mean, even during the ride, I was having to change gear by reaching across with the other hand and
Right.
do the gear shifting. This year, a bit of advice I got from one of the other riders was pad here. So this has all got gel padding underneath it and some fairly generous tape, and don't wear gloves. And I've been trying that for a few months now, did it through the race, and that worked really well. Somehow, I think the fact that the padding stays still and your hand moves around it means you don't have constant pressure in exactly the same spot. And so that's really helped, and my hands are feeling, I'd say 95% fine.
Which is good after 11 days on the bike and then a week to recover.
Well, I just saw one of the other contestants just put a video on Facebook today showing himself locked in a toilet because he couldn't get the bolt undone.
So we've done the bars, and at the other end we've got the other contact point, which is this specialised power saddle. How did you get on with that?
That's right, it seems to work well for me. It's got the shorter nose than a lot of saddles, so it doesn't get in the way too much. It's got the cutout. The key for me has been getting this onto an inline seat post instead of the standard
so
layback.
moving you further forward on the
Yeah,
bike.
I think I've got quite short legs, and so moving me forward seems to be the key to my comfort.
Yeah, and I guess that helps as well if you've got the aero bars on the front, you're kind of more over them.
Yeah, you're tilted over.
Yeah. And were you running time trial bars as well, aero
I did.
bars?
I had some clip-on aero bars,
Yeah.
profile design clip-on aero bars, and they're worth their weight in gold. A race like this, it's all about getting aerodynamic and staying down as much as possible.
So how much time could you spend in the aero bar? I mean, is it a comfortable enough position that you could do hours
You've got to train yourself.
Stretch?
Yeah, you've got to practice it. I am in a position now where I can do it for hours.
Right.
I could probably happily spend 8 or 10 hours down there, but that's practice. But the difference it makes, the moment you get down on them, you see your speed go up a couple of kilometres an hour.
Yeah.
And you can't ignore that sort of free speed.
So over the length of an 11-day race, you're looking at hours and hours of benefit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that might make the difference in getting there a day earlier or a day later. Yeah.
Or making the ferry.
Exactly.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, thanks for showing us around your bike.
Yeah, no, you're
Congratulations on the win.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, if you've got any questions about the bike or about Ian's kit that he was using, don't forget to ask them in the comments below. We'll get them answered for you. And like and subscribe for more like this on Road.cc. Cheers.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.